that is a simple but absolutely fantastic recipe from our friends in Ireland. So we start out with minced beef. I have here 2.5 kilos because, as always, we cook for an army. That's about 5-6 pounds of ground beef, 80-20 I would say. So we start with that and a big pot and a healthy glug of oil. Oh, quite a lot here because with that much meat we need some startup grease. So let's get this started on not too high, and then in it goes, the whole bunch of it, just like that. And then we start breaking it up. So I'm gonna get my exercise today. And we continue breaking this down. Now, once I have it like this, before I continue, and this is sort of an important step, I'm gonna give it a good tablespoon of sea salt at this point. I'm not seasoning for flavor now, but I want the salt to help draw out moisture and also so the meat is seasoned for a longer period of time. And now all there is to do is break this down until we have nice browned crumbled bits of beef. So see you in probably 10 minutes or so. And now you see everything is nice and crumbled but gray. And if you see here in the bottom all that water, that you need to continue till it's all evaporated so we start getting some browning. So that's what we're looking for. So continue maybe 10 more minutes here. And by the way, if you like our videos, click subscribe, give us a like, throw us a comment. It helps our channel build so we can make content for you. As you can see here, we have evaporated all the water and we have been browning up. And if you see in the bottom here, I'm sure you can see from the top camera, we have a beautiful fond in the bottom, brown and nice, a lot of flavor, not burned, not black. And that's exactly what we want because we want to build up layers of flavor here because we have so few ingredients that to make this really good, you need to take that extra time. So now I want to take out the meat, crank down the temperature a little bit, and then we're going to get out the meat so we can set that aside before we continue. All the meat is out and set aside, and now you can actually see all that beautiful flavor we have built up in here. I'm gonna give this a little bit more oil, just a small splash, doesn't have to be a lot. Then I have 3 large white onions that's been finely, medium fine chop, I would say, it's not crazy fine. And they go in, and now we wanna cook them. Not too high temperature here. You want to sort of let them sweat. They will brown up a little bit from the fond, but I don't want them to brown on their own, if you understand what I mean. I want them to soften and become translucent and nice and give a lot of flavor and body to this. So all that fond we will lift up. The onions will lift some of it by the water that comes out of them, but the rest we will lift that up in a bit. So let these soften and then I'll see you. And when the onions, they are nice and translucent and they start smelling sweet instead of that sharp smell, then they are perfect. Then we are gonna add, this is 6 carrots that I've cubed up. So they're ready to go in. And now we're gonna mix that around and let them saute a little bit here for a couple of minutes, not long, but I just want them to get a little bit of flavor on the surface before we add anything else. So give them a good stir around here and let them continue for, as I said, a couple of minutes, maybe something like that. And then we can move on with the other things. And when they've gotten a little bit of heat, temperature here, we're gonna create a spot in the middle here. And then 4 cloves of garlic minced. We want them to start getting a little bit of flavor and cook them out so they really develop some flavor. Then tomato paste, probably for this amount of meat, I would say 3 tablespoons. And this, again, you want to cook it out a little bit before you mix it in, just to take that raw tomato flavor, taste, whatever we call it, just get it out of there.
Anyway, it's not a tomato-based mincemeat.
No, it's just to give a little bit of body,
yeah.
a little bit of body to the sauce that we're going to create. And when you start smelling the garlic, then give this all a good mix in. Because now we start building our sauce. Nice and mixed. First up, Irish stout. That's going to help us with our font. So, just in with a whole can here. And don't worry about the alcohol if you're thinking about that, because that will totally evaporate out of this. So there's nothing.
No, we don't worry about the alcohol.
Some people, they do.
Yeah. But is that Irish stout, is it made for cooking or for drinking? Because I'm always confused.
Well, honestly, I don't like drinking it, but I love it in cooking in stews like this.
Yeah.
Now we're going to crank up the temperature, and then with our spatula, we're going to start helping the beer release all the font in the bottom. That's going to give an amazing amount of flavor. You can already see how this is. Ooh, this is going to be good sauce. But before we add anything else, we want to be sure that we have removed all the font with the help of the evaporating alcohol. And now you can see here, when you can see it from the top, I think, when I drag it like this, you can see the bottom is already all clean. So super, super flavor we are getting out of that. This is gonna be very rich comfort food. That's for sure. All of that is out. Then we are gonna continue with homemade beef stock. 1 liter in first here. Nice. Also a homemade product linked down below. You'll have to learn how to make that. It's like liquid gold. Half liter more, because we have quite a lot of meat. And then we are going to reintroduce our meat to our sauce here. In with that. Without making too much of a mess, I have tendencies. Perfect. I managed. In with all of that. And then mix it up. And mind you here, we are going for a relatively thick meat sauce for this recipe. We don't want it to be too, let's say, soupy, if that's a word. I don't know if it is.
But this pie doesn't have any dough or anything, right?
Mashed potatoes.
Yeah, but not dough on the bottom.
No, not shepherd's. And by the way, shepherd's. This is cottage pie, because if we were using lamb, then it would be shepherd's pie. So, just to keep.
What if you use fish? Becomes fisherman's pie. But there, I think there is a dough, right?
Yeah. Fisherman's pie is a whole different story with a white sauce and puff crust and top.
That's good. Also, we have to try.
Yeah, we tried that in Singapore. It was fantastic, actually.
Yeah, it was really nice.
So, now we want to go in with some aromatics. Couple of tablespoons of fresh thyme. Couple of tablespoons of fresh rosemary, chopped up, because they're too big to eat. And then 2 to 3 tablespoons of W sauce. I'm not attempting to pronounce that whole word, because everybody...
Worcestershire sauce, something like that. Clever name.
Difficult. But mix that all in. And as you saw before, I gave it a tablespoon of salt on the meat. This will certainly need some more salt, but let this simmer for maybe 15-20 minutes before we taste it for salt. Well, we moved the meat over to the other stove where it's simmering away nicely, and this is one of the good things about this recipe, because you can let that simmer for a long time. Actually, the longer you let it go, the better it's going to get, because all the flavors, they are going to really infuse. But now I want to get started on the mashed potatoes, and I'm sure you know how to make mashed potatoes. But I'm going to show you a few tricks that lifts it just a little bit better. I have here around 4 kilos of potatoes cut into chunks like this, even size. And 4 kilos, you have to add in this recipe, you need to have more potato weight than you have meat weight. But important with potatoes to get them really good is that you start them in cold water. So since I'm not at my faucet here, I'm using a pot. And you want them fully covered. Like that. And then we get them on our induction stove here and get them started on max. And I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of rock salt. Obviously, for mashed potatoes, we're going to salt them also when we're mashing them because they need a lot of salt actually to become really good. But we need some salt here to get them started. Now we want to bring this up to a boil and let them go till they are fork tender. And then I'll show you how to elevate them to really good mashed potatoes. A good 20 minutes after it started boiling, let's give them a check here. And look, fork tender, that's absolutely perfect. I'm gonna switch this off and then I'm gonna go drain them. And then I'll show you how to make them perfect. Here we are, all drained. Now they go back on the stove and we start it up. And now we want to make sure that we evaporate all the excess water that's on the potatoes because you want them to be dry. That's how the mashed potatoes, they become fluffy and not starchy and starchy, that's the right word.
So you don't want it creamy, you want it more fluffy.
I want it fluffy and that's fluffy.
It's so fluffy, I'm gonna die.
That was a good movie, by the way.
Yeah.
But these are already nice and dry. So that's super. I'll just give them 1 more minute here on the stove and then I'll put them down here to finish them off. Nice and dry, potato smasher. You could use a potato ricer if you have one. I don't, so I'm using this. Just first break them up a little bit here and not much because they're too dry to mash. First up, we're gonna add a couple of knobs of butter. Do this first. This is softened butter. I would say for this much potato, 3 knobs of butter, maybe a little bit more.
Sure, even more.
Okay, so okay. You were actually asking for butter. Then we're going in. That's a new. And then I have 400 grams of sharp Gruyere. This is not very Irish. It should have been sharp cheddar, but I couldn't find any. So now it's Gruyere or Graviera, as it would be here. But we want to get that in while the potatoes are hot so it can melt. And that's only 8 or 10 of these punches here, because then the cheese and the butter can melt all on its own while we prepare another important trick here. We are taking a little bit, this is half-half, heavy cream and milk. We take, I don't know, some of it. It doesn't really matter. 4 egg yolks, 1 broken, doesn't matter, into the milk. And the reason for this is I want to make sure that it gets evenly dispersed. So I want to break up the egg yolks here a little bit with a whisk. Just like that. So you see it's even and broken up. And we're going to give it all of this. And I'm not so worried if I add a little bit too much, because these mashed potatoes, you want them to be a little bit more loose than if you were serving them, because once we put them on top of the meat and it goes into the oven, then they will brown up. That's the reason for the egg yolks. That will help the browning on top. But I think I will need even more of our half and half here.
You need them a little bit more liquidy to spread nicely on the surface.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And also because, I will show you later, but when we make the pie, you have the meat, then you can put your mashed potatoes with a spoon and then level them out. But we are going to use a piping bag instead, so we make a little bit nicer presentation. But yeah, this needs a little bit more of our half and half. Maybe a little bit more butter. It's a lot of potato. Yeah. As Chef Jean-Pierre says, butter makes everything better. So.
Yeah. But you don't need to cook that anymore.
No, that will cook in the oven.
Oh, okay.
But you want to add these extra things, the cheese and the egg yolks, so you get this nice brown crust on top of your pies once they get out. A little bit more of this. Oop.
Nice shower in cream.
But I think we're getting there. Perfect consistency, absolutely nice. As I said, a little bit on the thinner side that I would normally do, but now we have to taste it for salt. That is kick-ass mash, kick-ass, but we need a bit of salt here. Tablespoon, not teaspoon. I would say a good tablespoon of salt here. It is, after all, 4 kilos of potatoes. And then we're going to use white pepper. Of course, if you don't have white pepper, you can use black, but I don't want that color of fragrance in my mashed potatoes. So white pepper is always good. So give it good rounds of that. And then I think once this is mixed in, I think we have perfection. I'll let that sit for 5 minutes for the salt to dissolve, then I'll give it another taste. Now I'm setting this aside, and then we will continue finishing off our meat stew. Remember this one?
Yeah.
This has been simmering away now while we have been doing potatoes and other stuff. And this is just becoming so nice. I mean, if let it go for a couple of hours if you can, easy, it will just make it better. But this is not, as you can see, this is not thick enough. You want this to be thicker for this kind. You could have added a couple of tablespoons, 3 tablespoons of flour before we added the liquids. And then it will thicken up automatically, but I prefer to use a slurry. This is 3 tablespoons of tapioca, which is more potent in thickening sauces than, for instance, cornstarch would be. So in with this, and we give it a good stir, and then we will see how this thickens up really quickly, actually. 1-2 minutes, and then we have a nice thick consistency. You see how it thickens up already?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, now it's getting to what we want. We want it to be able to carry the mashed potatoes on top, so that's why we do this. Let that simmer for a couple of more minutes to really get as thick as it can, and then we will add the final ingredients. This has a nice consistency now. All I want to do is test it for salt. I prepared a spoon here so I don't burn myself on camera. So, Ooh, that's good, but it needs some salt. I would say a good tablespoon of sea salt. That will help it. I'm gonna get that in, and then I'm sure it is there. Final ingredient that we are going to add is a bag of frozen peas. You can take them straight from the freezer. I took them out a little bit before, but that doesn't really matter because we're not going to cook them. We are just going to add them like that, and then we're going to get them in there and actually switch it off. They will just cook a little bit. Some recipes, they put the peas on top between the meat and the mashed potatoes, but I think they have to be in the meat mixture. That's my opinion.
I think that's better.
I don't like that you have a whole layer of peas there, which is just, it has to be a little bit of carrot and pea, onion, meat in every bite, so.
Peas are not so fantastic to carry a layer on their own.
No, but they give a nice earthiness when they come as a part of a bite here. Now this is off, and we're gonna let this cool down ever so slightly before we layer this up and finish it in the oven. Well, you could build this up in a big oven pot like you've seen so many other people do, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to make these little individual serving pots here.
They're so cute.
They're very nice. And we also use them for French onion soup, by the way, which is also coming up in an episode. As you can see, I have much more meat and potato than for these 4, but we will cook them in batches. So now it's all about getting the meat stew in the bottom about halfway up, something like that. That's what we're looking for. We don't want it too high up. We want a good layer of mashed potato on top here. So I'm saying something like here. That looks good to me. I'll fill all these up, and then I'll show you how we're going to do the potatoes. Well, here they are. And now, like the Irish grandma would do, she would ladle on her mashed potato and then level it out and rough it up with a fork to make it look nice, these brown bits. We're going to do a little bit different. Going to use a piping bag. If you don't have a piping bag, then you can use a Ziploc.
Isn't that more difficult, or we'll see?
It's a question of presentation here. Okay. So we're going to fill in mashed potato here from the top, and then I will take a couple of spoons of this. And I'll show you how to do this so it looks pretty. That's at least the idea. Let's hope. That should do it for the first ones here. Nice. Good mashed potato. So, here we are. First, I'm going to fill up a couple of these, but just to get started here. Snip off the tip, like that. And then we get started. And we make, I'll see if I can do it over here so you can see. We're going to make these little, so they sort of make these little chops, because they will brown up in the oven because of the egg yolk and the cheese. And then it's going to look pretty. And you have that little crunchy bit on top there. It's going to be really good. And just continue like this till you have a full closed layer. And I'm going to continue this the rest of my afternoon. And then when I'm finished,
That will take time.
I'll bring you back to show you the end result. See you in a couple of minutes. There they are, and I think they look pretty. Of course, that's subjective, but I made them myself, so I like them. And we have I did mention this before, we have a piece of baking paper here because things like this, they have a tendency to start bubbling over, so to make it a little bit easier to clean them. Now we're going to stuff these in the oven, and we have the oven running at 180 degrees. We put them in the middle, and we're going to let them go in here for probably half an hour, something like that. We might at the end fire up the broiler just to brown them up a little bit more, but we will see that when we get there. So see you in half. 35 minutes in, and ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. So let me get this out of the oven and you will see. This is just beautiful.
Wow.
Look at that. If that is not near perfect cottage pie, I don't know what is.
That's art, baby.
We can debate the design, but look, brown, crispy, mashed potato, and as I said, look at how it bubbled over. That it does that, and it's perfectly fine. Just put that piece of paper, and it's easy cleanup afterwards. Now it's the moment of truth, and I have been looking forward to this because we put in a lot of effort. And find some of the meat down here with some mashed potato. I mean, cottage pie. It's not one of the dishes that you can present very nicely on a plate if you cut it out, but if you serve it like this, then it's beautiful.
That makes it better, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There is comfort food,
Oh.
and then there is this. This is amazing. And the trouble we went through building up flavors, making fond in the bottle of the pan, you are just do it, spend the extra hour. This is absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait to serve this for our guests. So definitely, this is one you have to do.